So basically, this is my drone tier list, 14.22. And Skarner, Omega broken. Karthus, still pretty strong. And if you want the Y card's pretty strong. Honestly, this champion, it has no counters. It like, you can't invade him if Karthus is good. Has insane scaling, pressing ult, no one respects, good against melee champions, and currently a lot of melee champs being played. And I would say as well that Lilia is pretty strong still, even though it got nerfed, because basically, well, Lilia, it got nerfed by the armor. But this is like, doesn't matter as much. This is just for monsters healing, not for champions. So the clear is still the same, Q flash is still OP, the damage is the same, it doesn't actually matter in my books. But you need to know how to play this champion, right? And as for Elise, why it's A+, because like, this champion is very, very good. I think that this champion is especially good in solo queue, because people will fight you no matter what. That's why I put this champ pretty high, but I don't think this champ is stronger than the others in S. And yeah, why Amumu is strong? Because, well, Amumu is just a noob champion, but pretty solid, good against squishy champions, just has good kit, fine clear, good skirmishes after 6. I think overall can provide frontline if you have no tanks, is just solid champion, right? Lee Sin, basically, I think this champ's actually pretty good, but I don't necessarily think in Europe it's as good. I think it's better in Asia. If you look at Lee Sin, right? I'll just go, I'll just go to AO West. Okay, I'll just go AO West. And I'll just go to basically, actually, I'll just go to tier list. Jungle. So you can see Lee Sin is like somewhere far down there, right? In AO West. And then if you go to Korea, this champion is like randomly higher, right? It's just like skill gap. But I do think this champion is very solid in the right hands. I do think it's a good champion. And as for Kha'Zix, I think this champ is very strong as well. As long as you're not playing against a bruiser / tank, then this champ's pretty good. Zac, honestly, Zac's like one of the most underrated champions. I think this champ is actually pretty fucking busted. But yeah, I mean, this champ just like is good against most champions, right? As long as he can't interrupt your jump in team fights, he's quite strong. Viego, honestly, Viego in the right situations is even S tier, but your draft needs to be aligned for it. Because if you get rolling, you really get rolling on this champion. But I put it on A tier because I feel like you can't always pick it, And as for Hecarim, I mean, Hecarim on paper is not always the best. It's same as Kha'Zix, it's not good against tanks / bruisers, but this champion can easily gank and make easy kills on the backline, which is why this champ is actually stronger than usual. And as for Vi, I mean, the champ did get buffed. I think it's buffed, but I don't even think they needed to buff Vi. But, okay, I mean, okay, Vi. At some point I'll find it. But yeah, basically 12% to 40% max HP, which I think is quite good because you can proc the passive shield quite often. It's actually a really big buff, by the way. This champ is like pretty solid. And as for Graves, I mean, I think this champ is just good after they changed the collector. It's cheaper to buy. If champs are running into you, this champ's even S tier, right? But I think that if you play against a lot of champs that outrange you, the champ isn't as good. But in the right situations, he's super good. And Bel'Veth, I mean, this champ, if it gets head right, is just super OP as well. If you get the head on the champion, you basically can literally 1v9, actually. Because you get ahead, you get your form, you just have dashes, good ganks, you snowball. And why is Grand A+ here? I mean, I was thinking about the Grand A or A+, but I still think this champion is super good. But this is a champion where you kind of don't want to die for fun. You need to have good farm, and if you have good farm, it's still insanely good champion. Wukong, I mean, actually, his Wukong buffs were pretty big. You basically have 4 seconds less cooldown on W, which is pretty big. The only downside of this champion is that this champion kind of clears slow, so you do need to play around your ultimate. But if you actually play around your ultimate properly and you play controlled, this champ is very good. But in solo queue, not always happening, right? But just solo champ. Same for Xin Zhao, very similar to Wukong. just saying for Zara, I would even put her on B or A tier for the average Joe. But if you're in high elo and you understand tempo and you are not dying for fun, setting up objectives, it's a very obnoxious champion still. If you go Leandri, I would say the champ's very good, but this champ isn't as good because people play quite fast, and if people play fast, this champ loses value, which happens in lower elo. But in Diamond Plus, A plus. Below that, A or B. And basically, Volibear, I mean, why is A plus? I mean, I think this champ should be A, but because people fight you like apes, I put it A plus because people don't know that against Volibear you just don't fight and scale and you win the game. That's why I put it A plus. And I mean, I'll just cover A tier as well, right? Just these champs, but I'm not gonna cover B tier. But A tier, Jarvan, this champion is situationally very good if he's playing against champs like Syndra, champs like Jinx. But if you play against champs that have mobility, like Kai'Sa and LeBlanc, it's like omega dog shit. But in the right situations, it's like A plus or S plus, but depending on draft. Shaco, I mean, I think Shaco is a pretty decent champion, but you need to be like OTP level on it. Then I think this champ is decent. Well, Kindred. I mean, honestly, this champ, it's like there's right now not very good items. While Kindred is good in the right situations, let's say against Viegorite, against Graves, against Hecarim, against just champs that run into you right is good, but it's very telegraphed at the moment, and it's not as OP as before. It is kind of like it just doesn't have any good item at the moment. It feels like. So I put it on A tier. In the right situations, it can be A plus, but it would never be S. It wouldn't be. I mean, Olaf. I mean, this champ is just good against mid champions, and especially against champs that are immobile, and you can get to them. Which I think in some drafts he can be actually super OP. This champ is being underrated. I'm pretty sure. Udyr, oof, Udyr got some nerfs. I mean, Udyr, these nerfs, oof. Rito games hit Udyr really hard. I think these nerfs is like you max ult usually, but right now I think if you use QQ, I think it's still fine. But in mid to late game, you will feel this for sure. It's like a pretty big nerf. But the champ is still very solid against champs like Viegorite. But I would say that the champ is a bit good at. I would say A plus or A. I'm not even completely sure myself. I think if you're playing against the Viego, it's still like omega OP, right? But I think that if you don't have any setup, this champ is kind of hard to execute. I would say this champ is good if you're playing against melee champs that run into you, but if you play against champs that outrange you and can kite you, it's really dog shit. Nico, I mean, Nico is just like good against. I mean, Nico is just like good because people don't actually know how to play against Nico. They'll just die when you go on a mini. People forgot how to play against Nico, right? But you find a good ult, you get good kills. I mean, Talia, this champion needs champs like Leona as setup. If you don't have champs like Leona or Nautilus, kind of dog shit. But overall, it's a solid champion, especially if they have dashes. As for Rumble, I think this champ's pretty good. It wins 1v1 against most of the champions in A tier. If you have like a Rumble with like a Nautilus against immobile carries, it's pretty good. People underestimate Rumble. The clear early game is a bit sucky, but I think the scaling is like fine. And it has good 1v1s. So I put it on A tier. I don't think it's B tier. It actually has good skirmishing. And that is for Rumble. Mundo, I'm okay. Mundo, you can play it against like champs that don't deal much damage. Like, let's say you play Mundo against Wukong, okay? And enemy is Jhin. It's like S+. But if you play against, let's say, well, champs that have DPS, not as good, but in the right situations, it can be really good. I mean, Brand, arguably, it's still like A+, I think, or A. I still think the champ's very strong, but they nerfed the Q last patch. It costs more mana, so like the mana management is a bit more awkward. And they nerfed in general some items a lot. But I would say in the right situation, still A+ for sure. Fiddlesticks, I mean, Fiddlesticks is a counter pick, right? Fiddlesticks against like, you want to play this against AP champs usually, like Lilia, Karthus, Skarner, you know. But overall, blind wise, not so good. But output is like as a good counter, even S tier. But in general, just A tier because it doesn't do much early game, and this requires a lot of macro knowledge. And as for Nidalee, well, Nidalee, you need to play this with like Nautilus, Leona, champs like that. You don't want to play with like a Yumi, Soraka. It's insta FF angle. Ideally, you want to have Jinx, let's say in hyper carry that deals DPS like Jinx, right? Without Jinx or hyper carries, I wouldn't say it's that good. You don't want to have like Jin Nidalee, so it kind of depends on draft a bit. And as for Shyvana, I mean, I think this champ is not bad, but I think pre-6 complete NPC, at 6 Loki NPC. I think in this champ you get 1 or 2 items, you're good, but I feel like it's kind of too AFK. But it's still a solo champion. Talon in general, I've always had it on B, but I do think that right now it's a bit better after the buffs. Yeah, it's just A tier for me. Ideally, you want like a Nautilus Leona, right? Some setup. You don't want a Yumi or Soraka because you need someone to like initiate first. Very important. Kayn, I mean, honestly, Kayn's like A minus for me. In solo queue, Chaotic games, it can be quite good, but I don't think it's like that insane. This champion, I'll put it like on A minus, or B plus, because I just think this champ's like low-key like Shyvana, but actually a bit better. I mean, it depends per draft, right? But yeah. As for Rengar, well, same thing. You want like Nautilus, Leona, Rel, but this champ is A tier because if people have like Bruises / tanks and they're not NPCs, it's quite hard to pull off this champion. As for Master Yi, this champ, if you're like an OTP, it's not bad actually. It can 1v9 fights, but you need to know how to team fight. If you don't, not easy. It's like an OTP champion. Poppy, I mean, Poppy's S if you play against like a lot of dashes, like let's say Lee Sin and like a Samira. But overall, it's just A tier. In the right, like a lot of champs in the right situations can be S tier, but it's like situational. As for Jax, I mean, Jax is just good against champs like Xin Zhao, right? You want to pick Jax against like Xin Zhao, even Viego, you could argue that, right? Just against a lot of on-hit champions. Otherwise, not so good, because the clear early game's a bit dog shit, but that's pretty good scaling, so I put it A tier. As for Nocturne, same thing. If enemies immobile, you can actually play this champion, and you can easily make kills. If you play against like a Jinx, against a Victor, right? You get easy free kills. Sejuani, okay, Sejuani, you should hope your team is good, but this champ with like Yone or Yasuo is really, really good. With like a Victor or Yana, it's complete weasel. So you want to pick this only in the right situations, then I would put it A tier. But yeah. Otherwise you don't want to pick it. And Ivern, I mean, Ivern, honestly, it should even be arguably like A plus. Honestly, this champ is just so disgusting. But I'm gonna put it A tier, hoping people don't play it. Keep it confidential, okay? Fuck this champion. But yeah, okay, it should be A plus. This champ is disturbing. Actually, okay, I'll split A plus, whatever. Okay, this champ is actually OP. But don't play this champion. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the rest I'm not gonna cover. All you need to know is that Timo's Weasel, and that is pretty much it. That explains my thought process on like the tier list, and I hope you guys understand a bit better what I think. And I mean, if you have questions, you guys can ask, right? And I'll answer them. And that's it.